Dawn broke over Zlotyu, casting long shadows across the countryside as the exhausted group reached its outskirts. Remnants of a farming community lay smothered under the shadow of war. Shells of houses stood silent, their structures crumbling like forgotten memories. A bombed-out church stood sentinel, a grim monument to lives disrupted and lost. The air was thick with tension, the smell of burnt earth mingling with the whispers of a distant conflict. With the complete and utter failure of Operation Reset, they were now a ragtag band of NATO survivors on the run from Kalisz and attempting to evade Soviet forces. First Lieutenant Oskar Wolfgard, the highest-ranking member present, crouched low. He scouted ahead at a T-junction where two cars had collided, their wreckage like gnarled bones strewn across the dirt road. He spotted the faint glint of metal on the ground, an IED he recognized tucked beneath the vehicles, ready to ensnare the unwary. With a curt gesture, he signaled for Harvey Bonaparte and Otto Falkenhayn to move up the slope towards the crumbling facade of a ruined building on their left. "Recon up there," Oskar ordered, his voice steady but urgent. The others acknowledged with nods, the silence broken only by the crunch of gravel beneath their boots as they moved. Harvey and Otto maneuvered toward the ruin, careful to keep low. The higher vantage point offered concealment and insight. Through cracks in the rotting wood and rubble, they spotted two marauders keeping vigil over the IED kill zone. The bandits appeared tense, alert to every flicker of movement. With subtle field signals, the two soldiers coordinated their attack with Oskar, who was stationed by the Humvee, manning the .50 caliber machine gun, its muzzle gleaming darkly in the morning light. "On my mark," whispered Otto, lifting his PSG-1 sniper rifle. He held his breath and squeezed the trigger. The crack of the rifle echoed, a solitary report that shattered the stillness. The first marauder crumpled without a sound, a spray of blood painting the walls behind him as the bullet struck true. Oskar responded immediately, unleashing a hail of bullets from the heavy gun. The second marauder's body jerked backward as the .50 caliber rounds tore his body to shreds before falling to a bloody heap on the floor. Down the street, the firefight's clamor drew the attention of 6 marauders who had been looting nearby, their heads snapping up in alarm. Before they could react, Franco Lopez squeezed the trigger on the other Humvee's .50 caliber. The rounds erupted in a thunderous rhythm, punching into the ragged flesh of one marauder, sending him staggering to the ground while the others dove for cover. "Watch your flanks," Chuck Schick called out, rallying the remaining squad members. Gordon Richards, Connor McLean and Nigel Tucker hurried to take up firing positions, their eyes scanning for threats as they went on overwatch, focused on the impending clash. Meanwhile, from within one of the homes, a civilian emerged. A man in his mid-40s, clutching a bolt-action rifle, stood defiantly in the doorway. With calculated resolve, he raised his weapon and squeezed the trigger, the bullet finding its mark as it drilled into the head of a marauder who had been suppressed by Lopez's initial burst. The man dropped, lifeless, onto the blood-soaked earth with a hole right next to his left eye socket. "More incoming!" Connor shouted, indicating movement as one of the remaining marauders attempted to navigate toward Otto and Harvey's position. A concentrated volley of fire cut him down before he reached the ruins. Panic erupted as 2 more enemy huddled behind their vehicle, realizing the serious predicament they were in. They surged forward in an attempt to get in the car and no doubt leave, but the squad's return fire was merciless. The first marauder fell with a hollow thud, while the other was completely eviscerated by a burst of .50 cal before collapsing in the street. Silence reigned in the aftermath, punctuated only by the distant rumble of engines and the cooling hiss of muzzles. They had secured the contact and won the fight. Breathing heavily, the squad approached the last surviving marauder who lay sprawled in defeat. They bound him and pulled him away from the wreckage. As they searched their vehicle and trailer, they unearthed valuable spoils: an RPG-16 with 4 reloads and a German MG3 with 60 rounds left on the belt. Every piece of newly acquired equipment was a lifeline in this hostile land, either to use or to trade. These 2 weapons would hold their value if maintained. They prepared to interrogate the prisoner, knowing that survival often hinged on the information drawn from the defeated. Nothing about him stood out: mid-20s, unremarkable features, the kind of face that blends into crowds and disappears from memory moments after passing. They tied the young man to a rusted post, securing him just inside the half-collapsed wall of a home. With the threat of Soviet forces closing in, the need for intelligence weighed heavy on their shoulders. "Talk," Oscar commanded, his voice low and steely. The captured marauder glared defiantly, a veneer of toughness breaking under the pressure of his predicament. "What do you know about that IED?" "You'll kill me anyway," the young man sneered, a challenge in his voice that mingled with the scent of blood and dirt. Oscar stepped closer, unflinching. "Tell us, and you might get out of this alive." The prisoner hesitated, fear creeping into his expression. "Fine," he spat. "There's a pressure plate, 15 to 20 meters up the road. It'll blow anything that sets it off to kingdom come. You know, fucking kaboom." "That's all I know," he sneered. Franco grinned, shaking his head. "Good job, we won't kill you now." "Well, not yet anyway," he chuckled to himself. "Bind him up," Oscar ordered. The squad quickly complied, knotting ropes around the marauder's arms and legs, making it clear he wouldn't escape anytime soon. With the man subdued, they turned their attention to the house where the civilian joined the fight from. Roman Grabowski, a farmer from the area, emerged with his wife, Joanna, and their 16-year-old daughter, Marietta. The family appeared haggard yet resolute, their faces bearing the marks of repeated encounters with the chaos surrounding them. "Thank you for what you've done," Roman began, his English surprisingly good. "We've suffered at the hands of those bastards for too long. They've taken everything from us." Joanna interjected, her tone anxious. "They come every week. This time because you were here, we could fight back." "Any other raiders left?" Harvey asked, his eyes darting around. "No," Roman said. "Not now, but there'll be more at some point. Although I do hear engines approaching, might be Soviets." Oscar exchanged glances with his team. The danger was real. "Yep, they're after us. We need to keep moving. Can you point us in a safe direction?" Roman nodded, his brow furrowed with concern. "I can, but you must hurry. If they find you here, they'll kill us along with you." At that moment, Joanna pulled Oscar aside, her voice trembling. "Please take my daughter to Krakow. Deliver her to my parents. They are well connected." Oscar studied the girl, who stood apart, unease etched on her face. "Your family is well connected?" he asked, gauging the worth of such a risk. "Before all this," Joanna whispered, her eyes darting toward the distant rumble of engines, "my parents had connections, money, power." Her fingers dug into Oscar's sleeve. "Get Marietta to them in Krakow, and they'll make it worth the risk. If not with supplies, then with information and contacts on who to trust, where to go. In that city, knowing the right people is everything." Marietta caught wind of the conversation, stepping forward. "Mama, I can't go," she protested, voice thick with emotion. "My place is here with you, and I can fight." Joanna placed a calming hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Marietta, think of the future. We may not survive this. I'll come for you when it's safe." With tears welling in her eyes, Marietta hesitated. "But what if I'm never able to come back? And what if you and Papa die?" The weight of the decision pressed on them, an unbearable burden. "We'll ensure you'll be safe," Oscar said, attempting to instill confidence. "We'll get you to your grandparents." The discussion turned intense, but in the end, a glimmer of resolve returned to Marietta's expression. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek, before replying solemnly, "Okay, I'll go." Meanwhile, Nigel grunted as the Humvee sputtered, its wheels spinning helplessly in the muddy terrain. His attempt to maneuver it out of the kill zone had gone awry, and now he was stuck, a clear target for anyone scanning the road ahead. Behind him, the tension among the squad mounted, each member acutely aware of what was coming on the other side of the hill. "Fuck me dead, mate," he muttered in his Aussie accent, slamming his fist against the steering wheel. A bead of sweat trickled down his brow despite the chill in the air. The engine wheezed, straining against the resistance. Connor McLean, noticing Nigel's predicament, gritted his teeth. "Stay put," he shouted, already in motion toward the second Humvee. "I'll get the winch ready." The others gathered around, all eyes on the stricken vehicle as Connor prepared the winch cable. Harvey and Chuck moved into position behind the Humvee, ready to push if necessary. "On three, Nigel," Connor yelled over the rumble of the engine. Nigel nodded, his grip tightening on the wheel. "Let's go. 1, 2, 3, Connor called, and the winch clanked as he engaged it. The cable tightened, pulling against the sinking tires. Harvey grunted, using his strength to help push the rear while Chuck kept watch on their surroundings. The squad worked as a well-oiled machine. With a final heave, Nigel felt the wheels grip at last. The Humvee lurched forward, clawing its way free from the mud. A collective breath of relief swept through the group. "Damn, that was a tough one," Chuck breathed, shaking his head. But the relief was short-lived. From a distance, the roar of engines shattered the tense stillness. Two Soviet BTR-70s appeared at the roadway to town, armored beasts rolling ominously towards them. "Get into cover!" Oscar shouted, his voice sharp. He organized the squad, each member shifting into action as fear gave way to instinct. "Otto, take the high ground with your PSG and MG3. I'll man the RPG. Harvey, you're with me." They sprang into their designated spots. Oscar set the RPG down and nodded to Otto, who propped his rifle on the remnants of a wall. The weight of the responsibility settled on Oscar's shoulders. It was time to get dirty. "Hummer 1, set up among that rubble. Hummer 2, get in behind the hedge line," he directed, pointing to where Franco and Gordon could create flanking fire with the 50 cals. The squad settled into their roles, their hearts racing as the threat closed in, each second stretched like an eternity. "Oscar," Chuck called, indicating the Grabowski home. "They should stay inside." Oscar nodded sharply. "Roger that. The family stays inside. Tell Marietta to get in the Marauder vehicle. We'll be taking that if we have to bug out." By the time Chuck turned to relay the order, Marietta had already hauled herself into the commandeered utility vehicle, where she sat rigid behind the wheel, jaw clenched, knuckles white against the dash. She looked every bit the brave girl she portrayed to her mother moments earlier, but there was a flicker of fear in her eyes. The BTRs drew closer. Oscar caught his breath, knowing the ambush would begin in moments. "Hold your fire until I give the signal," he instructed, steadying himself against the debris. "Once they cross that line and trigger the IED," he gestured sharply, "we hit them hard." The squad nodded, their focus locked on the road, breaths synchronized with the engine's roar. At that moment, the BTRs slowed, the hulking forms shifting as they surveyed the scene. An air of trepidation mingled with the dust as they readied for potential threats. Then they moved forward into the kill zone. The IED exploded with earth-shaking force beneath the leading BTR-70. Dirt, metal fragments and flames shot skyward in a deadly fountain. When the dust settled, the Soviet armored vehicle stood defiant, scorched but functional, its engine growling through the chaos. Though the explosion failed to breach the hull, terror succeeded where high explosives couldn't. Hatches crashed open as soldiers scrambled out, abandoning their war machine in blind panic. "Fire, fire, fire!" Oscar yelled, shouldering his RPG and letting loose. The rocket streaked toward the second BTR, punching through its flank and into the engine block. The vehicle shuddered violently as black smoke poured from every seam. Following their comrades' example, the crew abandoned, spilling out onto exposed ground. Soldiers from the first BTR sought cover, weapons raised, but gunfire found them first. Harvey's M203 grenade launcher barked aloud, dropping two Soviets instantly and suppressing a third behind wreckage. The Soviets desperately dove for the sparse foliage along the roadside, but half of Oscar's squad held the high ground. There was nowhere to hide from the withering crossfire. As the Soviets focused on escape and cover, Oscar loaded his second rocket. The RPG roared again, striking the same triple BTR, this time destroying the cargo area and its contents. The warhead also ignited something vital. The vehicle erupted in a fireball of twisted metal and burning fuel. As the combat ensued, the Soviets returned fire to where the RPGs had been targeting them from. Oscar dropped flat as a PKM machine gun answered with accuracy. Bullets whined off the concrete inches above his head, but several rounds caught both his arms for 3 damage. Thankfully, his coolness under fire was maintained, and despite his wounds, he remained in the fight. From opposite flanks, Connor McLean and Gordon Richards opened up with their mounted .50 calibers, their heavy rounds cutting through both Soviet squads like harvester blades through summer grain. The firefight intensified as more Soviets fell. Blood pounding in his ears, Wolfgard's eyes narrowed on the PKM gunner who'd wounded him. Pure vengeance drove him to shoulder the RPG, excessive firepower for a single soldier, but the throbbing pain in his arms demanded satisfaction. He steadied himself, exhaled slowly, and squeezed the trigger. The rocket screamed across the battlefield, striking the gunner in the torso. The explosion transformed the Soviet PKM gunner into a crimson cloud that rained down on his position. Though the blast only eliminated one target, the spectacular violence sent nearby troops diving for cover, suppressing them. Before the Soviets could reorganize their position, a thunderous roar split the air as an Apache attack helicopter lurched into view above the tree line, black smoke trailing from its tail rotor. The gunship wobbled dangerously, but its weapon systems remained operational. Twin flashes erupted from its pylons as Hellfire missiles streaked toward the surviving BTR. The Soviet vehicle disappeared in a catastrophic explosion, leaving only a burning chassis. The remaining Soviet troops scattered in panic, abandoning their positions and fleeing into the woods. Banking hard to avoid a crash, the damaged Apache miscalculated its clearance and caught its rotor blades on a tall pine. Metal shrieked against wood as the helicopter spun violently, careening downward before smashing into a shower of debris. The squad sprinted to the Apache wreckage. Amid twisted metal and burning fuel stench, they found co-pilot Terry Harrison alive, propped on one elbow, his wild-eyed relief visible through the smoke. Chuck Schick shouted, a grin breaking across his weary face. "We have a live one!" Terry blinked against the smoke and dust, a laugh of disbelief escaping him. "I thought I was just about done there." Harvey knelt beside him, checking for injuries. "You're damn lucky. Sorry to say, but your pilot didn't make it." "Yeah, I know. Poor bugger. We were trying to limp it to Krakow," Terry said, rubbing his neck. "We were the last Apache in the unit." "Good thing you made it out," Oscar said, glancing over the horizon. "Well, we're heading to Krakow ourselves, so feel free to tag along." Relief washed over Terry's features as he nodded. "Don't mind if I do." The group shouldered their gear and trudged back to the Grabowskis' farmhouse. Roman stood in the doorway, knuckles white against the frame, jaw clenched. "Come inside," he beckoned, eyes darting toward the tree line. His wife appeared behind him, wringing her hands against her apron. "The Soviets have eyes everywhere. They'll execute us for helping you." Her voice cracked. "And as for Marietta, I've heard what the Russians do to young women. I don't want to even think about it." Oscar stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper only the Grabowskis could hear. "We need to stay here tonight. We'll establish defensive positions around your property. You'll be safe." Oscar wiped blood from his forearm. "We eliminated the immediate threat to both you and us. We should be okay, at least for the night. We will head out before first light tomorrow." Mrs. Grabowski studied his face, searching for deception. Finding none, she exhaled slowly. "You are doing us a favor by taking Marietta, so tomorrow can work," she conceded. Oscar nodded, catching Chuck's eye. "Double perimeter," he said, his Norwegian accent thickening with fatigue. "We will make this farm like Akershus Fortress in Oslo. It'll be so impenetrable, you won't want us to leave." Mrs. Grabowski smiled. The group filed inside, carefully evaluating their surroundings. Chuck and Gordon approached Oscar, now tending to his wounds. "You look good considering," Chuck said, removing 2 bullet fragments from his upper arms as Gordon bandaged him. "Had worse than this, that's for sure," Oscar replied, grinning through the pain. "But thanks." As they patched Oscar up, the discussions turned tactical. "We need food and water," Oscar said, glancing around the modest home. "Roman, can you help at all?" "Of course, I'm a hunter by trade," Roman said, a flicker of purpose returning. "I've got a couple of spots. It's mostly safe, but we've all got to eat." Meanwhile, the squad shifted into foraging mode, split between scouring the wreckage and maintaining a watchful eye on the perimeter. They took stock of the Apache and the 2 BTR wrecks, salvaging any useful equipment left behind. Off the bodies of the Soviets and the Marauders, they secured 2 PKM machine guns, 2 AKM assault rifles with GP-25 under-barrel grenade launchers, and 10 standard AKM assault rifles. Atop of this, they found 2 PKM reloads and 10 AKM reloads. After they scavenged what they could, Roman, Otto, and Franco took to the woods. With a grim determination, they ventured out to hunt game. Inside, the atmosphere simmered with unspoken tension. Oscar gathered the remaining squad members, eyes sharp. "We can't linger here too long. We need a plan for Krakow." Chuck nodded. "The more intel we can gather, the better. We're a target now, and we can't afford to let down our guard." Harvey glanced at the window, concern brewing. "And what if the Marauders come back? What of the Grabowskis?" "Then we fight," Oscar said. His tone shifted, ironclad. Each word ignited a spark of determination in the team. Despite the danger, a camaraderie filled the room, the hope that somehow they had what it took. As dusk settled, they prepared for the night, alert but safer than before. War raged around them, yet among allies they found purpose. For tomorrow they begin their journey to Krakow, to be continued.